I did get interested in art at an early age. I drew a portrait of my mother when I was 11 or 12, I think, and was jazzed that it looked like her. So I took some art courses in high school. The second semester, I had a terrible teacher who turned me off to the whole thing. So in college at UCLA, I actually was a philosophy major, but I was taking art history for fun. And I got discovered in a Chinese art history class because I correctly identified an unknown as a fake. And I was the only one who got it, and that sort of set me on my path. I started meeting artists my own age who were incredible artists, and I realized they were just as good as the artists I had studied, the New York School artists, for example. Basically, I made the decision at that point I wanted to work for the living artist and not the dead artist. I would say my approach to curating is narrative. I want to tell a story. I'm very committed to educating and enlightening the general audience. There's nothing more exciting than when the light bulb goes on and someone really gets the art for the first time. I look at contemporary art as a language, like a foreign language, and my job is to make it accessible. Yes, I mean, artists are my friends, my colleagues. I speak their language. I'm an artist myself, but as I say, I'm not proactive about showing my drawings. I only show them when I'm invited, and I was just recently invited again, so it's always a thrill for me. But that's secondary. Well, of course, one key to, in my opinion, is the installation and the way you present. I mean, going to an exhibition is a journey. And, the curator can make or break the experience for the visitor. I've seen a lot of shows that are fragmented and disjointed, and you don't know whether you're supposed to turn left or right or go straight ahead. If the work is poorly installed, it creates a kind of feeling of discomfort. So the visitor is going to think, well, this is not great work because they're not feeling good about it. But in fact, the reason they're not feeling good is because the space feels awkward. My label copy is brief. I don't use art forum jargon. I want, my brother to understand it. People who grew up in the valley where I grew up, who didn't have art in their lives, I want them to get what I'm trying to convey to them. I am a curator who loves, first and foremost, being a curator. And there are many curators younger than myself who are on, the fast track to becoming a museum director. And that's what they want to do. Directors have to spend a lot of time, fundraising, running the institution. So they don't have the time to do the scholarly work and the creative work that a curator does, which is what I really thrive on. And I don't ever want to give that up. Well, a curator has to be involved in fundraising. There's no question about that. Whenever, at any institution I've worked at, when it comes to grants, the curator is the expert witness who usually drafts the copy for explaining the project and, what the project is.
Donors, though?
Yes, of course. When you're working at larger places, you definitely interact with donors, you interact with collectors. You have to learn how to ask them for some funds occasionally. But you usually don't do that all by yourself. You work with the development team and with the director. So certainly when I'm installing a show and I want all the parts to fit together, yeah, I mean, I view it as an artwork. But I was actually just had a conversation with someone last week about this phrase curatorial practice that a lot of younger curators use. And they're all bogged down in theory, and what happens is they're not looking at the art. And so, they do these highly conceptual projects. It's what Paul was talking about earlier. And that's not an artwork. That's an idea governing the form of the show as opposed to the show coming out of what the curator observes, and then the curator's job is to shape it into an artwork. I mean, I know a lot of curators who don't know what's going on in their own backyard, but I've always made a point of being out there. When I lived in Cleveland, I did it. When I lived in Phoenix, I did it. It's my, it's the milieu I want to be part of. And then in my role as a curator, again, if I see somebody who's really talented, I'm going to do my best to get their work shown. A gallery experience, obviously, the purpose is to sell the work, the commercial gallery. But in a museum presentation, again, the mission there is to educate and enlighten. And again, I think I said it earlier, but I want I want the light bulb to go on for that person who, you know, who doesn't already get it, because it's, as I say, it's just a language. In fact, I have to tell you, I had great advice from Michael Freed when I was a student at Harvard. You know, I have to say, I'll tell you what the advice is in a second. He did not practice what he preached as a writer, as you know, his writing. But he said to me, when you write, it has to make perfect sense to someone who knows absolutely nothing about your subject. And that has guided me my entire career. I hover intuitively over my words because I want to be really precise and clear. I don't want it to be confusing. I want people to get it easily.